After proving Rimac wrong on camera, Matt Armstrong now faces the biggest decision of his career. Should he buy the very Chiron he rebuilt? The automotive community is split, and the debate goes deeper than most people realize. Some fans are urging him to make it happen, treating it as the only logical conclusion to everything he's accomplished. Others are warning him of the financial disaster waiting to unfold, a decision driven by emotion rather than sound judgment. Both sides have compelling arguments, and the truth sits somewhere in the tension between them. Matt has been transparent about his intentions from the beginning. He wants to own this Chiron when the rebuild is done. That's not casual interest or opportunistic thinking. That's serious intent backed by real financial planning and months of visible commitment. Think about what he's actually invested here. Months of meticulous work splitting the car down to its fundamental components, exposing engineering secrets Bugatti never intended to be public, designing custom upgrades that push beyond factory specifications, and doing all from an independent garage while the manufacturer's CEO publicly insisted it couldn't be done. Matt didn't just rebuild a hypercar. He built a case, a living, driving argument that knowledge isn't proprietary, and that capability doesn't belong exclusively to factory technicians wearing authorized badges. After all of that effort, after all the scrutiny and pressure, he doesn't want to hand the keys back to Alex at FXG and walk away with nothing but views and subscriber counts. He wants to drive what he built. He wants to own the car that challenged manufacturer gatekeeping and proved the critics wrong. That's completely understandable on an emotional and professional level, but there's a financial problem, and it's a significant one that can't be waved away with enthusiasm alone. FXG originally bought the crashed Chiron back from insurance for nearly $2 million. Once the rebuild is complete with Matt's custom upgrades and documented improvements, the finished car will be worth considerably more than that initial salvage purchase price. Matt would need to negotiate a fair price with Alex, accounting for the added value his work has created, and then actually have the funds available to close the deal. That's where things get complicated. And that's where the community debate begins to reveal its deeper layers. One side of this debate is straightforward and emotionally compelling. Matt absolutely should buy it. He's proven his capability beyond any reasonable doubt, not just his audience, but to the entire automotive world watching this unfold. He split the car, redesigned components that Bugatti considered proprietary, and improved on factory specifications in ways Bugatti's own engineers never attempted because they were working within corporate constraints and established protocols. He's invested months of labor, creative energy, and his professional reputation into this project. Owning the finished result validates every bit of that investment and transforms it from a commission job into a personal triumph. Beyond the technical argument, there's a story value, and that's where this decision becomes more than just a transaction. This Chiron will become the centerpiece of Matt's collection. The car that proved independent hypercar rebuilds are not only viable, but potentially superior to manufacturer service in certain respects. The car that made a CEO's public statement look foolish and short-sighted. The permanent symbol of a remarkable victory over institutional resistance. Imagine Matt taking this car to shows, events, and future videos, not as a borrowed build or a finished commission that belongs to someone else, but as his own vehicle with his name on the title. That's content with shelf life measured in decades, not months. That is a story that grows in value as time passes, and the rebuild becomes automotive legend. Matt isn't just another exotic car collector with deep pockets and a taste for exclusivity. He's the man who built this specific car under extraordinary pressure and public scrutiny, who stood in the gap when the manufacturer refused to help, who documented every step and shared it with millions. Owning it makes that victory permanent and personal. It transforms the narrative from Matt Armstrong rebuilt a Chiron to Matt Armstrong owns a Chiron he rebuilt against all odds. That distinction carries weight in an industry built on reputation and legacy. But the opposing side raises concerns that are harder to dismiss, and they deserve serious consideration because they're rooted in financial reality rather than pessimism. This is a salvage title Bugatti with a documented crash history and an independent rebuild that permanently voids any manufacturer warranty or support. Bugatti refused to assist with this car during the rebuild, citing policy and liability concerns, and there's no realistic reason to expect that relationship to improve once it's complete. Every future service issue, and with a Chiron there will inevitably be service issues, will require independent solutions, creative workarounds, and likely significant expense without factory backing. The resale market for this car is also fundamentally limited in ways that don't affect clean title examples. A clean title Bugatti Chiron per sport in excellent condition is worth several $1,000,000 and trades in a marketplace of ultra-high net worth collectors who expect provenance and factory support. Only 500 were ever made, and it remains one of the most desirable hypercars ever produced, a machine that represents the absolute peak of internal combustion engineering. But this specific Chiron carries a salvage title from a serious frontal impact, severe enough to deploy all airbags, damage for radiators, compromise the aluminum front structure, and potentially affect the gearbox mounting bracket. Even after meticulous rebuild with upgraded components and documented improvements, that history is permanently attached to the car's record. The pool of potential future buyers is limited to enthusiasts who understand the rebuild story, appreciate what Matt accomplished, and are willing to accept the associated risk of owning a salvage title hypercar without manufacturer support. That's a much smaller market than the clean title Chirons enjoy. If Matt pays somewhere between $2 and $3 million for this car, but salvage status means it could only realistically resell for $1 to $1.5 million, that gap represents serious financial exposure. That's not a theoretical loss. That's real money that evaporates the moment he signs the purchase agreement. The fans urging caution aren't trying to kill the dream or diminish what Matt has achieved. They're pointing out that the dream has a price tag beyond the sticker, a hidden cost that shows up in depreciation, limited liquidity, and ongoing maintenance expenses that can't be outsourced to factory service centers. They're warning that emotional attachment to a project, however justified, can cloud financial judgment and lead to decisions that feel right in the moment but hurt for years afterward. Matt Armstrong isn't just popular right now. He's at the absolute center of the biggest independent rebuild controversy in automotive YouTube history. The Bugatti CEO made a public statement that got picked up widely across automotive media and mainstream outlets. Millions of people are following this story in real time, watching every upload, debating every decision in comment sections and forums. That level of attention is rare, and it won't last forever. Public interest has a half-life, and while Matt's achievement will be remembered, the intensity of current engagement will inevitably fade as new stories and controversies emerge. The iron is hot right now, and if Matt plays this correctly, he could fund the Chiron purchase entirely through merchandise revenue without touching a single car from his existing collection. That's not speculation or wishful thinking. There are proven models for this approach, strategies that have been executed successfully multiple times by builders who understand how to convert audience engagement into sustainable revenue. The fans saying don't buy it, it's too risky, are often operating under the assumption that Matt would liquidate collection cars to fund the purchase, essentially trading established assets for a compromised one. That's a legitimate concern under those circumstances, and the math doesn't work in Matt's favor if that's the funding strategy. But if merchandise revenue can generate the necessary capital while a collection stays intact, the financial pressure changes dramatically. Matt wouldn't be sacrificing existing assets or betting his financial stability on a single salvage title vehicle. He'd be converting community enthusiasm into purchasing power while giving fans a genuine opportunity to participate in the story and potentially win remarkable prizes in the process. The fans saying absolutely buy it now have a realistic path forward that doesn't require Matt to mortgage his future on an emotionally driven decision. Both sides of the debate can find something to work with here, a middle ground that acknowledges the risks while creating a pathway to the reward. There's also a larger argument for ownership that goes beyond the financial math entirely, an argument rooted in principle rather than profit. The Chiron rebuild isn't just about one car or one YouTuber proving he can do what a CEO said was impossible. It's about a principle that technical knowledge isn't the exclusive property of manufacturers, that independent builders can achieve what corporate gatekeepers insist is impossible, and that determination, transparency, and skill can overcome institutional resistance. The right to repair movement has been fighting this battle across multiple industries for years, from agriculture to electronics to automotive. Manufacturers have consistently argued that modern technology is too complex, too dangerous, or too proprietary for independent repair, that only authorized technicians with factory training and tools can safely service their products. Matt's rebuild is one of the most visible and compelling demonstrations against that argument ever put on camera. He didn't just fix a broken Bugatti. He systematically dismantled the claim that manufacturer control is technically necessary rather than a business decision designed to protect market share and service revenue. If Matt owns a completed car, the story has a permanent conclusion that resonates far beyond automotive YouTube. He rebuilt the car they said was impossible to rebuild. He upgraded it beyond factory specifications in measurable, documented ways. He drove it, his car built by his hands, as proof that manufacturer control is a matter of policy, not technical necessity. That narrative has value that compounds over time, growing stronger as the story is retold and referenced in future debates about repair rights and manufacturer gatekeeping. 20 years from now, people will still reference this project when arguing about whether independent repair is viable for complex modern vehicles. Matt owning the car means he's permanently part of that story as its protagonist, not just a skilled contractor who handed the finished product back to its owner and walked away. That distinction matters more than it might seem in the immediate aftermath. It's the difference between being a character in someone else's story and being the author of your own. So, where does that leave the decision? Matt Armstrong has a clear dream, one he's articulated repeatedly and pursued with visible commitment. Own the Chiron he built, drive it as his own, let it represent everything this project stood for, every principle defended, every doubt it overcame. The financial concerns around that dream are real and substantial. Salvage title, limited resale market, no manufacturer support, significant long-term maintenance risk. Those aren't imaginary obstacles invented by pessimists, and anyone telling Matt to simply ignore them isn't giving him honest advice. They're giving him emotional validation that could cost him dearly. But the merchandise strategy changes the calculus in a meaningful way that deserves serious consideration. If Matt can generate the capital through community-driven merchandise sales rather than liquidating his collection, it reduces his financial exposure significantly while also deepening his connection with the audience that made this entire project possible. He keeps his existing asset intact, rewards his fan base with genuine opportunities to participate and potentially benefit, and converts the current peak of public attention into funds needed to close the deal. That's not a fantasy or a desperate gamble. It's a model that has been executed successfully multiple times by people who have already offered to walk Matt through the process and share their experience. The question isn't really whether the Chiron is worth buying in some abstract sense. The question is whether there's a financially sound path to owning it that doesn't compromise Matt's long-term stability or force him to sacrifice other assets he's worked hard to acquire. And for the first time in this debate, that path looks more plausible than it did when the conversation first started. The pieces are there. The audience engagement is there. The moment is there. Should Matt pursue the merchandise strategy aggressively, treating it as a genuine funding mechanism rather than supplemental income? Should he negotiate hard on price given the salvage status and use those savings to build a maintenance reserve for the inevitable expenses that come with owning a hypercar without factory support? Should he walk away entirely and let someone else own the most famous independent Bugatti rebuild ever completed, preserving his financial position but giving up the symbolic and practical ownership of his greatest achievement? That decision belongs to Matt alone, and no amount of community pressure or debate should force his hand. But the financial picture is more nuanced and more promising than the debate usually acknowledges. The risks are real. The rewards are substantial. The path forward exists if Matt chooses to take it, and that path doesn't require him to bet everything on a single emotional decision. It requires strategic thinking, community engagement, and willingness to execute a funding model that converts attention into capital. Whether that's the right move depends on factors only Matt fully understands: his financial position, his long-term goals, his tolerance for risk, his vision for what comes after this project ends. What's clear is that this decision represents more than just buying a car. It's a statement about values, about whether independent builders deserve to own the fruits of their labor, about whether the right to repair extends all the way to hypercar ownership. It's a test of whether community support can translate into real-world financial outcomes that change what's possible for content creators. And it's a deeply personal choice about what Matt wants his legacy to be: the guy who rebuilt an impossible car or the guy who rebuilt and owns an impossible car. The difference between those two futures might seem small, but it's everything.